Have you ever heard the name Adrian Dantley? Yes, you. I'm talking to you, the one watching this video. Have you ever heard the name Adrian Dantley? If you're watching this, I'm assuming you're an NBA fan. You routinely tune into games, push agendas on Twitter, engage and theorize about legacy talks and GOAT debate, and obsessively consume NBA content, whether about the current or the past. On Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, you most likely take in a great abundance of information surrounding the NBA. So, I'll ask you this again. Have you ever heard the name Adrian Dantley? And if you have, how often have you heard the name Adrian Dantley? Random, right? Well, let me explain. Adrian Dantley was an active NBA player from around the late 70s to the early 90s. A 14-year career to be exact. He spent most of it on the Utah Jazz, and throughout his career, he was a good NBA player. Like, really good. Like, Hall of Fame good. I mean, he is in the Hall of Fame. He's a top 20 points per game scorer in the league's history, a 6-time All-Star, All-NBA player, and has scored 30 points per game for a season on multiple occasions. In fact, he did it 4 times in a row. Adrian Dantley has a remarkable resume, one that supersedes 99% of the people that enter the NBA. And with how impressive it is, it's shocking how little he's spoken of through NBA discourse. Of course, some of you may know who Adrian Dantley is. I mean, he's regarded as an extremely prolific scorer. But even if you know him, how often is he a topic of discussion? How much is he spoken about? Shoot, how much does he even cross your mind? What's my point here? Well, Dantley just made me think for a second. If someone who has the resume that he does, puts up eyebrow-raising numbers as he has, and is as a prolific scorer as he was, ends up being completely irrelevant in a society where sports discourse is as boundless and as limitless as it is today due to social media, then what does that spell for this current generation of NBA players? If you didn't understand that first segment, let me break it down a little bit more. With the landscape of sports discourse highlighted by social media, the spotlight on the NBA is brighter. Every player in the league catches a bit of that shine. That's how the general public knows guys like Santi Aldama. But eventually, like everything, as time passes, these guys will fade into obscurity, barely coming into mention. Think of any player from the previous generations, the ones that are really spoken about. That's only really reserved for an elite category. The 99.99th percentile of players to ever play in the NBA are the only ones that will be remembered. And the further you go down the list, the faster you'll fade into obscurity. And like Adrian Dantley, there's a lot of really good players who will become irrelevant the instant they retire. How many people do you think will remember Chris Middleton? No, I'm being serious. How many will remember multi-time All-Star and second option on the championship team, Chris Middleton? And this is no disrespect to Chris Middleton at all. Genuinely, he averaged over 20 points per game routinely throughout his career, and as I mentioned before, was a second option on a championship team. He is one of the mascots of the Hall of Very Good and has an NBA career that almost everyone would dream of. But he still will almost certainly be forgotten. Shoot, I forgot he existed and he's still active in the NBA. Like, he literally just played yesterday, I think. I sincerely don't see his relevance extending past his career. And I know, to you, this may seem like a tragedy, disheartening, a devastating story, but this isn't close to uncommon. Unless you're in the 99th percent of NBA players, you will be forgotten, widespread. And unless you're in the 99th percentile of that club, you will not be involved in consistent discourse. The group of NBA players that will be in those consistent talks when they retire will be so small that I don't think you'll be able to conceptualize it. The amount of unbelievable players that will fade into irrelevancy in just 2 decades in the future is such a gut punch. Honestly, if you think Chris Middleton's descent was hard to hear, just wait until I tell you what's next. I think it's really hard to mark your name in the NBA history books without collecting a couple of very specific things. Even if you were to have the numbers and the consistent success, your stamp on the NBA would not have longevity. While you'll be recognized as a good player and sustain some accolades, without achieving these very specific things, the length your name would carry past your playing career would be significantly shorter. Those two things, very specific things, are either an MVP or an NBA championship. If you Yes, you as a player were to win one of these awards or complete one of these achievements, the history of the NBA would be impossible to write without your name. As a star, if you don't accomplish that, it's very difficult, damn near impossible to attain that status. And that creates a wide chasm of NBA players that are really good, will rack up numbers, make all-stars, and might even go to the Hall of Fame, but won't end up being remembered. At least, I don't think. Think of a guy like DeMar DeRozan. Once his career ends, once the lights turn off, once it all shuts down, I can't see many people just speaking of him. Similar to Chris Middleton, except DeMar DeRozan was a bona fide superstar at points of his career. His inability to win a ring with the Raptors, the Spurs, and the Bulls, and him never reaching the peaks high enough to get an MVP despite being awarded All-Star after All-Star, lands him perfectly in my aforementioned chasm. He poured his heart out to the game of basketball, produced incredible seasons for the city he loved, became the face of a disparate franchise, with the holy grails of the NBA world being just out of his reach, out of his fingertips, will leave his entire doings, the life he brought throughout his career, the achievements he got, forgotten. Despite how incredible of a player he was and all he provided, his name is not permanently stamped into the page of the NBA book. And that alone will leave his career to fade away eventually into obscurity. He's not alone though. Like I said, this chasm I mentioned affects stars across the NBA, and even though it's pretty easy to clock that DeMar fits this category, there are so many stars that have such a light on them that the concept of them becoming irrelevant is almost blasphemous to imagine. But as I said this before, without collecting any of those achievements, you don't have that assurance to be stamped into the NBA history books. A guy like Devin Booker, who has been a star in the league since around year 2, will fall into that chasm. He never peaked as a top 5 player in the NBA, or consistently a top 10 one. Of course, he'll have the All-Stars and the All-NBA achievements, but seriously, I want you to think. If Devin Booker doesn't win a ring before his career is over, how long will it be before you, the casual NBA fan, forgets it? Sure, he'll be looked at as a good player and might be ranked in the top 100 players of all time, similar to DeMar DeRozan, but without that permanent stamp in the history books, he, like so many other players, will fall into the shadows, as crazy as it might seem. I want to make this clear before we continue. I don't consider being forgotten as just not being put into legacy convos or something stupid like that. That's not how it works. I think it's a little worse than that. I alluded to it earlier, but the players who fall into this chasm are tragic. Like everyone else, they spent their lives investing in the NBA. They put their soul into this game and proceeded to excel at it. These players in my chasm are near the top percentile of players in the league, at their peak scoring around 25, being the leader of their squad, the faces of their franchise, putting everything to make their stamp on the game. And sure, they may have gained all-stars, maybe all-NBA teams, made the run in the playoffs, but again, like DeRozan, Booker, and Damian Lillard, it was never enough. I want you to put yourselves in their shoes for a second. Despite how good you may play, how great you may look, how rare your abilities may be, you'll always be on the cusp. Every shot made that season, every grueling practice, muscle shredding workout, dribble on the court, loss you had, play drawn for you, times we've gotten chewed out by the coach, halftime speeches, Gatorade you drank, every tip-off, whistle, foul, shoot-around, game winner, win, loss, alarm, breakfast, nap, again and again and again and again, everything you've done catered to your success on the court. And it's worked. You've been good. Really good. You're one of the top players in the world. You're an all-star, leaving your team face of the franchise, and you made the playoffs, hoping that everything you've worked for, every single action and step you've done will culminate in the ultimate victory, winning a championship. But you can't do that. They're just a step ahead of you. Maybe the team is better. Maybe a guy in your squad got injured, or maybe you underperform, but none of that matters at all. Every step you've taken this season, gone. Worthless. No ring, no banner, no parade. Everything you've catered to this season, erased from existence, tossed in the trash. The ring you imagined, the glory you thought you'd had, the blood, sweat, and tears through every single damn fucking practice you went through is done. Useless garbage. And you gotta do it again the next year, in hopes of reaching that same championship. And you wanna know what happens to guys like these? You wanna guess? The same exact fucking thing. The same cycle, the same pain, the same heartache. again and 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 it doesn't stop. It never does. Despite being elite, seemingly at the top of the world, you're an all-star, an all-NBA player, the leader of the team, the franchise guy. You drop 26 a night, but every single year, every single time, over and over and over again, you try everything possible, but you can never fathom to reach the top. Now, if you haven't picked it up, I think these Asian players, as I've labeled them, accomplishments will be erased from the minds of the general fans due to it not being verified by a ring or an MVP. Obviously, all All-Star and all NBA awards are handed out to signify elite play, but that doesn't hold as much weight as an MVP or championship for star players. All-Stars and all NBAs do build a reputation as an elite player, but at the same time, with an MVP or a championship ring, NBA history literally cannot be written without your name in it, and you gain a bit of immortalization from them. These KSM players have a reputation as good players. They don't have the immortalization that a championship will bring, despite the constant elite numbers they may put up, or the deep playoff runs they may make. In the eyes of the NBA world, none of that matters, as if all the work they've put in for damn near the entire life is useless without a ring or a trophy. Like an MVP label validates how elite they are. I mean, some inferior players will be remembered more than guys like Dame will be, or DeRozan, or Booker, assuming they never get a ring, of course. Draymond Green may not be as traditionally impactful as a star, but still, his association with the Warriors dynasty throughout his career will always keep his name relevant, despite us knowing that he wasn't the pinnacle of dominance. The MVP is similar. James Harden and Russell Westbrook will be remembered due to how great their prime was, despite them not having a ring up to this point in their career. At their peaks, they were one of the best players in the league, arguably the best. The MVP is just a representation of that, similar to an All-Star award, since it solidifies your reputation as an NBA player. Unlike an All-Star though, it's awarded to one player a season. The MVP award indicates that for at least 1 year, you were the best player in the league, at the top of the NBA, the pinnacle of excellence. Similar to winning a championship, you won something that everyone in the league was striving for, to be the best, this time individually. And this isn't abnormal at all. That's how we all think. Even them. You don't think they don't want that ring? That they don't want to feel every single grueling second they put into the game accumulated into something? Anything. A trophy lifted up or a ring on their finger. An MVP speech. We as humans all desire it. That's why fans of all sports look at it this way, as if these few achievements confirm and validate everything about a player. Looking at the future, almost every single person in the NBA will be forgotten. I'm not exaggerating. Literally, I looked at the top 100 NBA players in the league, and there's only around 20 people who I think will sit purchase in people's minds, let's say 30 years down the road. And I split them up into 4 categories. 1, people who for sure will be remembered, people who probably will be remembered, 50-50 guys, players who it's too early to tell, and the ones who most likely will be irrelevant. You see how little that is? The small amount of people from this generation that would be even a thought, much less an active conversation. Let's remove the old guys for a second. The geezers, LeBron, Curry, and KD. This, the ones remaining, is representation of this generation, or what it's gonna be at least. SGA, 33 points per game this year, might be en route to his first MVP. By the end of his career, he will be framed as one of the most prolific scorers of this generation. Tatum, who may not win an MVP, but is on a Boston team that's primed to contend for at least a decade, and he's the face of it. I have no doubt that he will win at least 3 rings in his career, and will be remembered as another Celtics legend. Giannis has 2 MVPs and a DPOY, has won a ring and cemented himself as one of the most physically dominant players of all time. He will be regarded as a freak athlete, a monolith at the position. What do you think OG Anunoby will be remembered as? Serious question. Obviously, Knicks fans will know him, but he's one of the best defenders in the league, one of like 7 players in the NBA who could guard the 1 through 5, has the strength of an ox, gifted with a freakish wingspan, and oh, by the way, he's very talented on the offensive side of the floor too. Legitimately, a top 5 portable player in the league, and a generational role player. How many times do you think we'll be hearing his name? If he doesn't assume the role of a Draymond Green on the Knicks, which is an elite supplementary piece to a dynasty, do you really think we'll hear his name more than 30 times after his retirement? No, we won't. That's how much talent is lost as these generations pass. It won't be represented by guys like OG and Anunoby, not even close. It'll be represented by the top of the top. Jokic, who might be having the greatest offensive peak of all time, Wemby, who legit has potential to be the greatest player of all time, and Luka, who is on the most recognizable organization in the league and has been a top 5 player since his sophomore season. Like LeBron, KD, and Steph, outside of that core 3 and the various superstars around the league, the light will fade darker and darker. Talented players, star players will fade into irrelevance, and it's not our fault. Like I said, it's human nature. Without the immortalization, the tangible awards gifted by the NBA, all that work, the effort, the countless hours spent poured into this game will be forgotten. Not just by us, but by them, the players. That every generation is so every single waking second, a talented player slips into the crack, falls into the chasm, is forgotten, discarded, thrown away, like all that's been done for him is erased. And it's just a snap. We do it so easily, so quickly, like they're absolutely nothing. And you're not that much better. You, yes, you. You don't believe me? Really? Alright, fine. Just answer this question for me. Who was that man? The man I introduced to you at the beginning of this video. Come on, it was the first sentence I said. Surely, through the 10 minutes or so that passed already, you haven't forgotten him, right?